live? Do we die? Do we
We
breathe
live.
again?
We are live.
Marvelous. Hello, everyone.
Splendid.
Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the RAMS podcast. Now, in case you haven't figured out by the fact that we're called the RAMS Use podcast, the idea is that it's meant to be sort of a lot of the women in our group during this podcast. But I have obviously got the most beautiful women with me today, which is Felix and Owen.
And I'm always bloody here.
So joining me today, I have Felix, the Vice President of the Royal Holloway Rams, who was with us last week. So recurring face that you should recognise. And our special guest for today is one of our currently abroad students, all the way from Austria. We have Owen with us. Hi, Owen.
Ciao.
Hello, Owen.
I asked this chap along because he is the OG of original classic rock, so he's going to really be helping us with our topic today.
Good to see you, my man. Good to see you.
Just
Good
look at
to
his
see you
hair.
all too.
His hair is reasoning enough for him to be here.
And we have
And
the
also
wizard
hello
who's like,
to the editing tech wizard who will randomly appear at certain intervals to help us along if anything goes wrong. So the discussion topic of today is what we've called the best of the best of the best, which is basically where we're going to be taking some of the most classic, best rock and metal albums ever made. In my opinion, I shortlisted it.
as shortlisted by Tanya.
I am the Führer. This is how we work.
That is true.
And we will be arguing and debating in a similar fashion to what we did last week as to what is the best and what is the worst. Obviously, if you guys have any opinions when we are doing this live, please put them in the chat. If you have any opinions when hearing this as a podcast, send us abuse. I'm sure we'll read it at some point. So, what do we think we should start with, lads?
Let's go.
Which one?
I think we should start top left with Van Halen versus Dark
Yeah,
Side
that
of the
seems
Moon.
logical.
Yeah, I
This
think
is
we should
already
go-
such a difficult decision.
Well, now I don't think
Yes.
Dark Side of the Moon is Pink Floyd's best album. However,
Ooh.
because we're not even discussing that at the moment, I'm going to put my vote in straight away for Dark Side of the Moon beating Van Halen's self-titled album, because I'm just not really a fan of widdly wee technical metal. So
Widdly wee technical metal.
Yeah.
Oh God, Owen, what's your opinion?
Fair
on this
enough.
one?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. They're sort of quite different in a lot of ways. But
they are very different. You're right.
yeah, I've got to also think probably Pink Floyd takes it on influence and widespreadness, just kind of objectively.
It is very well known now.
But
Everyone's got that on a t-shirt.
yeah, exactly. Even people that don't know the album.
Yeah.
Sometimes
They just recognize the old rainbow.
Exactly, yeah, it's very iconic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, I'm a bit of a prog head as well, so yeah,
I think
I would agree
the
with you.
iconic element of the Pink Floyd album is what might tip this decision for me, and I mean that in might tip it to Van Halen. Because though Dark Side of the Moon is my go-to like revision album that I will listen to start to finish, it's become just too much. Like I've seen enough basic twats wearing Pink Floyd shirts that they bought from Primark and not actually knowing what's going on. So it's almost like the element of influence went too far away from sort of the element of art and the element of music, and it just became a facade.
Yeah,
Although was that there?
it inflates it.
Wasn't really anything to do with the music.
No, I know, but I think there's more elements to what makes these albums than just the music themselves. Like,
of course, yeah.
When we get to things like Power
Yeah,
later,
yeah.
I'm going to be arguing for just album art alone and how cool it is.
It's a shit album.
Wrong, influentially wrong.
Ooh.
Anyway, we'll get there. And then things like Van Halen, obviously, you have the element of how poor Eddie Van Halen died recently, so that has a little tick box there, being like, we have to mention it.
Oh
It
yeah,
has a
that's
rupture
true.
on it.
That album gets sympathy points, is what you're saying.
Basically, it has Eruption on it as well, which is one of the best guitar solos I've ever heard in my entire life. However, one negative point to it is that guitar solo was in the Minions film.
That's negative points.
So negative points for Van Halen, but I think
Too far into the mainstream.
exactly, way too far, which is again just another point that I said about Pink Floyd, like they've just got to the point where it's too much. So what are we just thinking we're going to be deciding?
I think it's a victory for Pink Floyd here, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah.
Numerically.
I think if we put it to a vote, I vote Pink Floyd.
Okay. Owen,
And
can I have
Owen?
your vote?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me
Okay,
too,
Pink
I
Floyd
do.
is the winner. I'm
Even though
sorry,
I
Eddie, please
accept.
don't haunt me.
There we go. Pink Floyd cinches the vote. There's too much of that going on at the moment, but hey ho.
Yeah, I love how we made this week the voting podcast week when we're currently dealing with US elections.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay, cool. The next one, which is The Clash's London Calling and Nirvana's Nevermind.
London Calling. What a weird album by The Clash to pick as their. I don't think it's. Again, another album that I don't think it's The Clash's. I don't think it's The Clash's best album.
If you think there's an album choice of mine that you want to veto and bring in another album, I'm sure the tech wizard can help us with that.
Well, what do you guys think? I think The Clash's self-titled album is probably their best, their first one.
As the wizard, I do like London Calling.
London Calling is all
wizard,
right.
You don't have an opinion.
London Calling is all right, and it's definitely got some of their best songs on it. However, it's a punk album that's 2 hours and 12 minutes long. A double album in punk is not really what. It's not very punk, really, is it?
Floats your boat.
The chat agrees with the wizard.
God's sake.
I mean, you've also got to think with Nirvana as well that they maybe have better albums, and this one is very iconic.
It is iconic,
but,
isn't it?
It's not quite the full kind of art rock of In Utero, sort of half, getting in that direction, and it's not quite the punk of their first kind of album, or with the thrash influence as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. The main reason I like Nevermind is it has all of these sort of weird conglomerates all put together to make this element, and it's one of the fundamental albums of sort of my childhood. It's one of the first concepts of grunge that I ever listened to. It's just, I would immediately vote Nevermind, even if we changed the Clash albums, because those, specifically albums like London Calling, especially as us over here in Great Britain, can be very, very influential also. In fact, I think like the British Museum had like a big exhibit on them recently, which is probably one of the weirdest outlandish things they've done. It still, for me, doesn't beat Nevermind. Not that I'm even a big Nirvana fan, again, for that mainstream element. I think the musical technicality of Nevermind is a lot more superior.
Yeah, I've got to give it to Nevermind as well. I'm really not a fan of London Calling. I do like The Clash, but that album is not their best, I don't think. And up against something as massive as Nevermind.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to beat Nevermind.
It's very, for a lot of people, it's an album that they heard when they were very young, and
for sure,
even got them into rock. Definitely, for me, it was one of the small group of albums that really, really pushed me in the rock taste direction.
Yeah, I think a lot of
was
people
quite small.
Yeah, I'd agree. Okay,
right now,
Nevermind
teenager.
It is. Yes, Nevermind.
Mm-hmm.
So the next
Never
two
mind
have
that.
Motorhead self-titled, Motorhead, and then Metallica's The Black Album. This is going to be difficult for me because I absolutely adore both of these albums.
2 self-titled albums. These are all self-titled albums, right?
Yeah.
Because generally the first album is usually the best, but that's for another time, I'm sure.
This is for another debate where we debate solely Led Zeppelin albums for an hour.
Well,
oh yeah, I'm sure.
I think all of us here really like Motorhead.
Yeah.
I think we're all pretty big Motorhead fans.
True.
The reason that I swing towards the Black Album is the Black Album, without getting stabbed by anybody in the chat, is how the Black Album is the only Metallica album I like. It's the only one.
I think Master of Puppets is a better choice for Metallica.
No,
I don't know
I really don't agree. I feel like the Black Album is made so much more seamlessly. It again, musically better. Master of Puppets again became too mainstream. It became pop rather than the rock that it's meant to be, which isn't necessarily attributed to the music itself, but it still has that element that we have to consider.
Sure. Although the Black Album is also kind of accused as being Metallica's sellout album by a lot of people. Although it's again this kind of thing of midway between 2 phases in their career. They bring out this, which is kind of a bit of the more mainstream rock that they did later on, and a bit of thrash too. And I don't know.
It's
As
funny that
much
you're
as I
saying
love
that, Tanya.
Pink
Given the Black Album has Nothing Else Matters and Enter Sandman on it, basically the only two songs that most people know by Metallica.
True.
Like the normies know those songs.
But then if you ask
The
anyone to
normies.
name a Metallica album, they'll say either Master of Puppets or Ride the Lightning. They won't say the Black Album.
That's but
Yeah, if
the
they're
people
really
who
into
could name a Metallica album are people who actually like Metallica, probably. Whereas if you just say name a Metallica song, Enter Sandman or Nothing Else Matters will always come up.
Good point. I think then we can just come to
Yeah.
an agreement that Motorhead be the OG.
Well, yeah, I think I agree with you. And again, I don't think that Motorhead album is their best, but I think Motorhead does win this.
Can we have another debate on a podcast about the best Motorhead album?
Yeah, we should just do
Sure.
one where we bring our favorite albums and see if everyone thinks what people think about them.
If you want to like veto any decisions of mine and bring in random albums, you are more than welcome to. I'm sure that'll make it slightly more controversial.
Motorhead self-titled album isn't
Interesting.
bad. It's, to be fair, it's not awful. It's got Iron Horse on it, which is a pretty good track.
Yeah,
And
that's,
Lost Gun
that's
is also
very
pretty
good.
fun, pretty good. And Vibrator's a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
all
best
of
track to play to your
all of the
mother without
songs
her
good.
really knowing what it's about.
Oh, you really surpass your parents in musical knowledge when you get to that stage. Cool. So we're now moving on to Megadeth's Rust in Peace. And that's Led Zeppelin number 4, right?
Led
I'm not
Zeppelin
being
4,
an
yeah.
idiot. Okay, good. I'm trying to see it on like my tiny screen to figure out what we're talking about. I'm not a tech genius.
No, I know, Owen, you're a big Megadeth fan.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And this is a
What's
very
Megadeth's
technical
best
and well
album?
put together album.
Yeah. Do you think? Now a lot of people say
Yeah,
Peace Sells.
objectively, yes. I think there's more variation in the types of songs that they wrote on Rust in Peace, though. Like many of the songs on Peace Cells seem to have the same
Sort of similar
structure and like
motifs.
they start with a creepy kind of clean guitar riff and then they kind of have a thrashier riff, and Dave Mustaine kind of almost sings the same notes on a lot of them, I've noticed. Like not that it's
Hot take, that's because he
not that
can't
it's a
sing.
bad album, but Rust in Peace would take it for me out of the two. But I also really like Dystopia. That's a great concept album that
I like that one as
I
well.
think is very underrated.
Because
Yeah,
you introduced me to it primarily, but
that's true.
okay,
That's true.
so I think Rust in Peace is a good choice then for Megadeth. Now Led Zeppelin 4, I don't think it's Led Zeppelin's best album.
No, you're wrong. I'm sorry.
I'm not.
This is your
Because
motif.
Led Zeppelin
Again, we will
1,
introduce the veto power.
Led Zeppelin 1 is definitely their best album. 1969, bear in mind that album came out. 1969, and it's so heavy, and you can really hear the funky jazz influence with really heavy guitars from Jimmy Page. I think that's their best album.
That's the reason why I don't like it. It's because I don't like jazz.
not jazzy, but like funky bluesy. Sorry, I didn't mean jazz. I meant similar to Black Sabbath's first album.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah,
4 is a lot more beautiful though.
Yeah, 4 is probably more popular because it's got Stairway to Heaven and Black Dog.
Yeah,
like ignoring the
When
fact
the
that
Levee
Stairway
Breaks
to
as
Heaven
well.
is played at basically everybody's funeral. Black Dog is such a just amazing song. Again, one that was shown to me by my dad. And I think the reason that I would choose Volume 4 is just for its sort of consistency throughout the songs and how there's like clearly a theme throughout it that has evolved. And I think that's the most important part of these Led Zeppelin albums is like Led Zeppelin 1, though it's an amazing album, having 2, 3, and 4 and its progression throughout, for me, is why I would choose 4. Because it shows that even after 4 albums, they can still bring something fresh to the table and they can still evolve their sound and they can evolve it to what I think is the best Led Zeppelin, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we won't change it, but I'm just letting you know that I think you're right.
If we were to change it, would your answer be different?
No.
There we go.
I still think overall Led Zeppelin wins out over Megadeth.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Megadeth, and if one of our current members, I forgot, sorry, is currently in the chat, he would probably scream at me and tell me that Megadeth are great, as I've heard many, many a time. And admittingly, Rust in Peace is a really good album. Live, it's appalling, however. And I think the only reason, one of the main reasons that I would never choose Megadeth is because Dave Mustaine can't sing, and though the talent musically of all of those bands, Yeah.
Mm.
Those like musically they are phenomenal. Their sound is great. Their stage production is great. But if he could just stop singing, that would be wonderful.
Poor Dave.
Get Chris Broderick to sing. Oh
Crazy
no,
Dave.
he's got his- Who is it?
So should we go for
Mm.
Led
Yeah, I
Zepp Volume 4
think-
as the winner of that one? I feel like that's probably what we're gonna go with.
I think in a vote,
Yeah,
I think Led Zepp wins.
Cool.
I'm
Jeez.
finding
Sorry,
it very hard to
Megadeth.
decide, but yeah.
It is a hard
I can
choice,
see
and I
what-
think overall
what
though,
you
Led
mean.
Zeppelin are just like the monster band. When it
Yeah.
comes to 70s rock,
Yeah.
there's not many.
Yeah, they were one of the ones that really pushed
Defined it.
ahead with and like huge stage productions and like epic, kind of storytelling and things like that.
Yeah.
Kind of emerged in the early 70s, and we'll get to Rush later, I guess, but
Yeah,
We
we're
shall
probably
indeed.
using the same reason at that point.
Mhm.
Right,
we're
Fleetwood
moving-
Mac.
Yes.
Fleetwood Mac's Rumours versus Iron Maiden's Power Slave.
Now, this is what I was mentioning earlier
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
mean-
some of the most well thought out album art I've ever seen is Iron Maiden's Power Slave because it's just so much fun. I remember being about 5 years old being like, Dad, why is there an Indiana Jones reference? And like that's the fundamental reason why this album is here and why I shortlisted it. Admittingly, there are better Maiden albums. I'm very, very, very partial to Power Slave. I think it's one of my favorites. And in a weird way, I kind of
Yeah,
wish
me
it wasn't
too.
put next to Fleetwood Mac because I don't like Fleetwood Mac.
Well, I didn't.
So-
Album art is cool, although I don't particularly like Power Slave. I think it's one of their best albums. I think it is one of the weaker of them.
Seriously?
Still a decent album. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think the earlier albums
Yeah,
are better.
I think it's probably my favorite.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would say it's probably my favorite of the classic Maiden albums, although
Yes, Owen.
they're all very close, it must be said.
Killers is my favorite.
Yeah,
but
we're
that's
comparing it
opinion.
to a very different album as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
Fleetwood
yeah,
Mac.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind Fleetwood Mac. I'm not sure I've listened to this album all the way through though, because it's kind of just not really to my taste. But
It's pretty and
yeah, it's
it's-
sort of
yeah, I've
classic.
noticed-
I think this is probably just going to show
Mhm.
our heavy metal elitism at this point. I think if there were to be another, just a sort of side note, if I were to put in another Iron Maiden album that would be similar to how much I love this one and exactly the same in terms of its really, really amazing album art, it'd be Somewhere in Time because that also has loads of references on its cover as well with things like one of the pubs in the background is called the Mariner from Rime of the Ancient Mariner and there's like other really cool elements put into it as well. And that again wouldn't change my opinion. I think you could put in pretty much any Iron Maiden albums other than the ones from like 2002 and it would be Fleetwood Mac.
Go your own ways, all right.
Yeah,
Don't stop
it's
the
a good
chain.
there's good songs on it like
There's a lot of great songs on there.
But for me, it's just a bit
Yeah.
not really mine. I'd rather pick Power Slave. Let's put it that way.
I don't know if that makes it a good thing or a bad thing, but we're gonna roll with it and pick Power Slave. I feel
Power
like
Slave is.
if
Fair
Fleetwood Mac
enough,
were to be
yeah.
put next to like The Clash or Nirvana earlier on, it might have been like a different answer, and it might have made
Mhm.
it to the next stage of voting.
Yeah,
But-
I think I'd have voted that over The Clash, but
Yeah, like at this point,
Yeah.
it's been put next to one of the gods. I don't think it was a bit unfair for it. A moment of silence for Fleetwood Mac, if we may.
Stevie Nicks will shed a tear in her
Yeah.
bath of cocaine.
A bath
Poor-
of
poor girl.
cocaine that she can now afford because she not only does solo stuff, but she's also an actress.
And was in
Yeah,
Fleetwood
yeah.
Mac. One of the most
Which is a
like,
bit, which she like was on American Horror Story in like the Coven season where she was just like, I'm secretly a white witch this entire time, and you're like, okay, great.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think
the Wizard. I think the Wizard might like Fleetwood Mac, and I don't mean Electric Wizard because they probably think they're shit. But
is the wizard of the live stream.
I mean the
currently
live stream
editing
wizard.
stuff. Yeah, he is. I've seen him been playing around on the live stream. For anyone who's watching this live, the wizard is unruly at best. Cool. So next one,
Bow
we're moving
beneath
on
me.
to- Shut up, wizard. Go back to your hubbyhole.
Yes,
so we're now
miss.
moving to British Steel by Judas Priest and Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. Why do you have to put these next to each other? This is going to be such a hard choice. Oh,
I mean, I know what I'm voting.
really? What's your initial reaction off the bat?
I think British Steel is one of the is better than Heaven and Hell personally.
No.
I think so. I think British Steel is such a classic Judas Priest, bit of Nwabum.
I might have to come over and fight you, Felix.
Yeah, well, what do you think then?
Yeah, before
I know you
smash
like
the
Heaven
books,
and
would
Hell.
Owen like to express his opinion first?
Oh, sorry, yeah, go on.
Well, yeah, this is pretty difficult. I probably have to say Heaven and Hell just because I like Sabbath too much. And to me, Judas Priest, although I like a few of their songs, have not quite sucked me into their world enough for me to differentiate them amazingly from a lot of other bands, I guess, of the time. Whereas Black Sabbath are kind of like the ones who made all of this happen in my eyes. The fact that they got Dio in and then made such a great album.
Yes, thank you.
Like even if Ozzy's obviously the classic sound has a lot to do with Ozzy's voice. It's just like a very fun collaboration, even if you see it in that way. But yeah, I don't know. I have to say Sabbath.
Yeah, the introduction of Dio is why I would also choose Heaven and Hell. And if we do have to get rid of Judas Priest, if the Tech Wizard could put a little crown on that album, that would be great. Because I adore Judas Priest. I've seen them once, soon to be twice. They are an amazing band live. They still have the same sound now as they had all the way back in the beginning of their original days. They've very much lasted, which I can't say the same for Black Sabbath, because if any of you were at the latest Black Sabbath tour, you couldn't understand a word Ozzy was saying. Sorry, Ozzy.
It was good where I was. I would say he did, but it was kind of almost a one-off. Like they played Download Festival 2016, which was towards the beginning of the tour, and there was a bit of a break, I think. So maybe I just got the opportune show, but yeah, no. They're still amazing. Judas Priest is still amazing live.
Well,
sure.
I'll allow it, although we do have to say Judas Priest has the fucking sickest album covers.
Oh yeah, even their most recent stuff like Firepower is just so fucking cool. It's like, this is a giant mech with guns.
Just more guns.
Pretty great.
Screaming for Vengeance is great cover too.
Including Dio, I am of the opinion that Dio Sabbath is the better Sabbath. While I understand that the sound was, I know. While I understand that the sound was like originated by, well, it wasn't even. I mean, it was Ozzy. There is one other singer whose name escapes me, but though the traditional sound that everyone remembers is
Ian
Ozzy,
Gillan.
I think that Dio has this amazing skill to stick to that original sound, but also develop upon it and evolve it into something completely new and completely different with such more emotion than Ozzy can put into it. This is just because I'm a massive fan of Dio, but I would have to choose.
His singing is way more dynamic.
Absolutely, Ozzy is very much a one-trick pony.
Ozzy's
the trick
great.
He does is amazing, but it's one trick. Whereas Dio is just, his vocal range is phenomenal. His vocal skills and styles are phenomenal. Like just comparing Heaven and Hell to some of his albums is like amazing. So I'm gonna go with Heaven and Hell if that's cool.
Well, I think Judas Priest loses out on that vote.
Sorry, I really like you, Judas Priest. I promise.
Yeah, Judas Priest gets a little crown, and they have awesome album covers. So
exactly, you can't go wrong with mechs and guns.
Comic book kind of style. Yeah.
It's
I'm glad
literally
you
like
put the
Power
next two
Ranger.
together because it's going to make this decision a lot easier.
Oh my god, this is going to be so easy.
So easy. So the next two albums we are discussing is Black Sabbath's Paranoid.
Really?
Yep.
And Paranoid.
Guns N' Roses.
This is hard for me. This is very hard.
Really?
Convince
me, Owen. Convince me.
I don't know.
Yeah, when you see that,
you two were on the Sabbath side.
Yeah, totally. I don't like Guns N' Roses at all.
I love Guns N' Roses.
Oh man, I
this
love
album is fundamental.
I'm not hugely into hair metal, but I fucking love this album. And I don't know. I mean, I just think, to steal Felix's motif, that Black Sabbath have better albums. Like they actually do. Even though this one is extremely famous. Yeah, man. This is very difficult, but I mean, I'm just gonna be a contrarian and go for Guns N' Roses.
I mean, it's got some.
Just such a fun.
It's got some huge tracks on it that like a lot of people on the street would know.
Not the
Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine. People know those. But I mean, Paranoid.
Even if they're not the best on the album.
Paranoid is just too
I think
Too
knowing that
perfect.
Felix will pick
Yeah,
Paranoid
yeah.
and knowing that Owen will pick Guns N' Roses
You're the
is leaving
deciding
me in a
vote here.
really awkward decision.
You are the swing state.
No,
Because-
well, I mean, I'm expecting to. You are the swing state.
I am the swing state. I am Nevada right now. Or
Oh,
even
yeah,
Florida, but
shit.
Florida. Anyway, no, not going down that route.
Mm.
I fundamentally love Paranoid. I think it's an amazing album, and naturally would pick it off the bat. If I looked at those two things straight away, I would immediately pick Paranoid. But thinking about it, if perhaps in some strange scenario I was the president of a rock and metal society, imagine that happening. And then in some other strange scenario that we would happen to have socials, what songs would be played on the jukebox first?
Paranoid.
Mm.
No, it wouldn't be.
Iron
It
Man.
would be
Iron Man. Fairies Wear Boots.
Fairies Wear
Hand
Boots
of
is a great
Doom.
song. Oh, Fairies Wear Boots might take
Hand
it.
of Doom.
Fucking
Yeah.
War Pig. Get that
Everyone's
shit on.
favorite song. Rat Salad. Everyone's
Even
favorite
Planet
song.
Caravan. That I would. I mean,
It's
Paranoid.
good. It's all good.
1970.
I mean, I love that album.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
it's.
I'm gonna have to say Sabbath just because of Fairies Wear Boots, because it's one of my best friends and mine
Mm.
favourite songs that we always sing at each other whenever we go to Fuel in Cardiff. So Fairies Wear Boots, it
Oh,
has to be.
yes.
It's a
But
monster.
can we give a gold star
Understandable.
to Guns N' Roses? As a well done, you did it.
Well
They're
done,
all
but
getting, like, a
unfortunately you were
trophy
up
now.
against
There's
Paranoid.
no winner.
There's no winner here, only money.
And we're the winners because we get to listen to all these great albums. Right, now let's talk about who's shit. Is this Rush up against AC/DC? Oh dear.
Yeah.
I think I know which way I'm voting. Not even
That's
a
not a
question.
joking. Minor note to the tech wizard. That's not a gold star. That's a pentagram that you've just assigned to.
I think that was the joke, though, isn't it?
God. Okay, right. But yes, Rush 2112 and AC/DC Back in Black. I'm interested in
Black.
your opinions first.
Back in Black was after Bon Scott died, wasn't it?
Yes.
Or was that Highway
It
to
was
Hell?
the first one
Not the very first one.
with the other guy. What's his name?
Yes.
Yes, well,
That man.
bloody hell, it will come to me.
To
He's
Google.
very famous.
Diddly diddly do. Talk about 2112 first.
Brian Johnson.
That's...
Yeah. Brian Johnson. That's
Brian
right.
Johnson.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so first one
Yeah,
with Brian
well-
Johnson.
Yes.
I think 2112 is just like incredible.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite albums, maybe. And Back in Black is incredibly fun, almost like the Guns N' Roses album, I suppose. But
Mhm.
it's not quite fun enough to beat Rush for me as a prog head. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I agree
And
with
they
you.
were just doing all this crazy arty stuff and making huge stage shows and
It's
telling
like
these grand stories.
proto prog metal almost, like a 20-minute epic.
Yeah.
And then plus
Yeah,
the
at
B
the beginning.
side has Twilight Zone, Passion of Bangkok as well.
I was going to say Twilight Zone is
Yeah.
quite
The
possibly
whole
one of my
album
favourite
is
songs ever.
pretty spectacular.
What's the Tears as well? Tears.
Tears.
And the
Yeah.
one and the last one. The last
Something
one.
for Nothing.
They're all good. They're all good. Something for Nothing. Yeah.
I don't even think it's Rush's best album, but I think up against AC/DC, AC/DC can't stand a chance to Rush.
No, especially because that's. I mean, if we were to use another AC/DC album, I don't think it would still manage to be 2112 for me. In fairness,
For me, Highway to Hell would pose
Really?
a better would
Really?
pose a better. I think so. I think it's a bit better. I think it's a bit more interesting than Back in Black, but
I
Yeah.
think places like Back in Black, High Voltage is another one that I personally really, really like.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, back from like 76, was it? It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And those
Even earlier,
songs,
maybe.
What
those
is?
albums even are awesome. I don't think any AC/DC album can beat Rush. Technicalities, musical genius. I don't
Mhm.
think it's possible. Even if you don't think that 2112 was Rush's best album, I don't think AC/DC can beat it.
No, I agree with you. AC/DC is just sort of plot, meat and two veg rock. Some people's tastes, but I think the thinking man's choice is
Yeah, it was a
Rush.
product. AC/DC is a product of its time in terms of it knew what the people wanted and it gave the people what it wanted. It wanted
Yeah.
fun, it wanted noise, it wanted guitars, it wanted solos, it wanted cannons, it wanted everything. But more isn't always more. Sometimes less is more. And that's
Mhm.
sometimes what I find in Rush, like just the ability to use one guitar and one vocal in such perfect union means so much more than an
Yeah.
entire album with the inclusion of cannons. You know,
Geddy Lee is also a fantastic
Yeah.
musician. He plays the
Yeah,
synth with
yeah.
his feet while playing the bass and singing.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Just for that, Rush 2112.
That's insane.
yeah, Rush is the music you listen to, whereas like AC/DC you can put on in the pub, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I get what you mean.
I think this is the same
It's a
reasoning
very,
as Guns N' Roses
yeah.
and Paranoid.
Yeah. Okay, get rid of AC/DC Wizard. Throw it
Come
in
on,
the
Tech
bin.
Wizard,
Yes,
keep
for
up.
sure.
Put it in the bin because Rush destroys it so much.
No, don't put it in the bin.
Yeah, put
Don't
it in the bin. Put it in the bin.
Okay, put it in the bin and then put Highway to Hell in its place.
I've also
make it
seen that you
safe.
change it for
Yeah, maybe.
Ninja Sex Party, but
Pardon?
we've noticed it.
What's he changed?
He changed the Rush cover to Ninja Sex Party's 6969.
Why do I let people
Yeah, I
have
saw
jobs?
that.
For God's sake. I mean,
Right. That
Ninja Sex
completes
Party
the
also is a
first.
great album, but anyway. That
That
completes
completes the first
yeah.
round.
That was intense.
The board is looking a
we're
lot.
already like 40 minutes in. We have like 20 minutes to get through these last ones. Jesus Christ.
Right. Dark Side of the Moon
Gotta
versus
see.
Nirvana.
Dark Side of the Moon. Next.
Owen, what's your take?
Yes, probably Pink Floyd. Yeah.
Yeah. I
for
think I'm
me,
gonna have to go with
as a
you.
prog head.
Nirvana.
And
Nirvana's good, but that
yeah,
album
even
is
if
a bit Babby's first grunge.
Yeah. I think in terms
Still
of
better than
this,
the
yeah,
Clash. But
yeah,
Nirvana is
Yeah.
powerful enough to make it through the first round of debate, but up against some of the greats, it's just simply not going to work. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. We're down to like 7 albums. Like it's done pretty well to make it this far.
Nevermind is not in my top 7
of all the
personally, so-
albums in the world. Fair enough.
So yeah, gonna go with Pink Floyd on that one. And once the tech wizard decides to sort out the screen and whatever it is he's doing, we will continue this debate.
yeah. So I think Pink Floyd cinches that victory pretty quickly.
That was quite easy. Yeah, there's no real debate
Although,
there. However,
although
for me-
Nevermind does have a nude boy on the front cover, so they
isn't
get
he
a
like
point.
20 odd years old now?
Yeah, he's
30,
pretty
but-
old now. He's got a big beard.
Yeah.
While we're discussing the next one, I
Yeah,
might Google it.
Wow, Motorhead Self
He
Titled
does
Album
like
versus
the
Led Zeppelin
15s.
4.
That's going to be really, really hard for me. I don't know if I can call that. Is abstaining an option? Nah.
Well, it depends if me and Owen vote the same way.
Yeah, you two divvy it
Yeah,
out, and then
yeah.
I'll be the tiebreak if there is a tiebreak.
I'm gonna have to say Led Zepp for this one. I think if Motorhead you put
Yeah,
Overkill up against Led Zepp 4, I might be more inclined to vote Motorhead. But
Mhm.
unfortunately not. Unfortunately, it's Motorhead's first one, which is all right, but it's not their best, and therefore I'm gonna say Led Zepp wins.
Yeah, I would agree on the same point, and also the fact that kind of maybe Led Zeppelin do a few more interesting things, whereas Motorhead have one thing that they do amazingly.
They do it very well, but
Specifically as well, like they branched out a bit more, but on this album specifically, it's kind of like one sound the whole way through.
Yeah.
Whereas
I kind
like,
of have to agree, which hurts my soul a little bit.
yeah,
but you
yeah.
like Led Zepp 4 too. So.
And has rises and falls and intense parts and very melodic parts and gentle parts, and then it gets heavy again, and it's just
Yeah.
it's quite a dynamic experience.
I think the element of Led Zepp 4 being Led Zepp 4, whereas Motorhead being it's technically 1, is the only reason that I would pick Led Zepp 4, because it has the ability to grow old but not gracefully. And it sort of was still enigmatic, it was still individual, it still had its own feel to it, its own vibe to it, whereas obviously this is Motorhead being the number one, the sort of the first step in stone, is the only reason that I would pick Led Zepp 4, because Motorhead's yet to branch out, it's yet to show you all of its other sides.
It didn't
So
develop their sound as much until
agree.
albums like Overkill, when they had a bit more going for it.
And Bomber and things like that
I'd
is
even say later than that is when they really branched out, because even the first like 3 or 4
Bless me, sorry.
Motorhead albums are quite. Well, every track is quite heavy, I suppose, and like thrash blues or something. But yeah, it's great though. Like, not dissing it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, thanks for competing, Motorhead.
we'll miss you.
We will miss you.
We
Just a
really
shout
do.
out moment for the album Orgasmatron and how amazing that album is. Anyway.
Oh yeah. I love that album, even if it's not very popular, maybe among some people.
I love Orgasmatron. I think
Bit
it's
of a
one of the best
later one.
albums.
Orgasmatron itself, the track is a banger.
Yeah.
Especially because
Anyway.
it just reminds me of Vibrator a bit. For obvious reasons. Power Slave versus Heaven and Hell. Wow. Tanya's probably gonna like rip
Have
herself
an
apart
aneurysm.
thinking about this.
I am, yeah.
I'm gonna make the first step and say that Black Sabbath clinches the victory here. Because I don't like Power Slave. But that's
I'm
my
gonna
opinion.
go contrary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Iron Maiden because I think this is more of a reflection of Iron Maiden's best sound, whereas Heaven and Hell is more like the second lot of Sabbath that you get into or something. I don't know. It's hard to explain. And yeah, just because it's this album. Like if it was Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath or something.
Yeah.
I'd go for
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, but gonna go for Maiden.
I see what you mean.
To
be fair,
Mhm.
sorry, yeah, go on. I'm only
alright.
saying Black Sabbath because I don't really like Power Slave. So
I think I'd have to,
All the
without
tracks are good.
making my dad drive all the way to my house 4 hours away and punch me, I might have to pick Power Slave over Black Sabbath. Simply because, as Owen quite rightly said, Power Slave is a development on what was already good to make it better, whereas Heaven and Hell was this step out of the norm. It was like an expansion upon what they already had, and it was a sort of a deviant. And while I adore the deviant and I think it's great, it kind of stopped, and it then obviously when he left Sabbath again went back to its original sound. So this album wasn't fundamental enough to change what at its core Black Sabbath is, whereas Power Slave led the way for more and more albums of similar styles and similar comedy takes, especially in album art. So I will have to go for Power Slave and hope I don't get taken out of the will.
Loads of those tracks are still played live as well.
Yeah.
Whereas the Dio era of Sabbath is kind of almost
dead.
a historical point, or it's gone, unfortunately.
Heaven and Hell does have cool artwork as well, though. It's very Sabbath.
Yes, I do like Heaven
Sabbath-esque
and Hell artwork.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's very subtle as well.
I like the Heaven and Hell artwork because it encompasses my nan really well, which is a random side story. My nan did actually go to a convent even when she was little and hated every second of it. And as soon as she was there, managed to find people like selling her cigarettes when she was about 9 years old. So the only reason I really like it is because it reminds me of my nan. Which is, I suppose, a wholesome side to that.
Wholesome, yeah. Paranoid versus 2112. Holy shit.
Oh,
hellish decision.
Oh my god. Yes.
Does anyone have any like initial thoughts on it? Because I'm just stuck.
I love Black Sabbath.
I'm leaning to
and that album is like fundamental Black Sabbath. That is the Black Sabbath album I would recommend anyone to listen to if they wanted to get into Black Sabbath and pretty much all of heavy metal. But Rush is king. Geddy Lee is daddy. Therefore, I'm gonna have to say 2112. I have to rep the that album because it is fucking absolutely interstellar, that album.
Yeah, I agree. I'm leaning towards Sabbath because
yes, Owen.
it's Sabbath, man.
I know it's Sabbath, and
something
it's like,
about
you know.
I think the fact that I let myself say no to one Sabbath album means I'm saying yes to this Sabbath album.
That's fair.
Yeah, I almost feel the same. They're like they did so much. They're kind of like the grim, dingy Beatles of the 70s. Like the nihilistic Beatles of the 70s. Every album for a while was just like something completely new, which we take for granted now that metal is like completely its own genre. But yeah, something about Sabbath. I don't know, man.
If Paranoid wasn't there, and it was like Master of Reality or Sabbath Bloody Sabbath or even Volume 4, I think I'd choose Sabbath over it.
I
But
think I'd have to choose Sabbath
Mm.
as Paranoid anyway, because as much as I love Rush, I heard Sabbath before I heard Rush. I fell in love with Sabbath before I fell in love with Rush. I still like Sabbath more than I like Rush today. So Sabbath as an entity, trying to get not too metaphysical, has persisted for me in the terms of love a lot longer than Rush has. And I still think that's the same for quite a lot of the rock and metal community. So repping one for all of the peeps, all of the people listening, all of the people in the future. I'm hoping that you agree, and I'm gonna say Black Sabbath.
Well, I'm glad at least.
Yeah, and there's plenty of prog in Sabbath.
Yeah. I'm glad this Sabbath album is the one that got through anyway. So I'll accept it.
Yeah, with all of these decisions, it's very difficult.
Yeah, that was the hardest one so far. Right.
God, this
it's
is
down to the last 4.
And we have approximately 10 to 15 minutes left.
Yeah. So
okay.
Dark Side of the Moon versus Led Zepp 4. Wow.
I was gonna say, can we take a moment to appreciate the albums that have got here first and how fundamental they are in our lives?
Yeah.
Damn, true.
Because these albums have all of them are quite classical. None of them they're not particularly modern, but they have paved the way for so much modern industry and so much modern music. And people and bands to this day still attribute a lot of their influence and a lot of their inspiration from these albums. So I'm glad these are the ones that made it.
I would say so.
Well, I mean, look at bands like Greta Van Fleet that literally just totally rip off Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I mean, you say the music is old, but it's just as relevant. You know, these
and
are
people trying to replicate Sabbath sound. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
No,
totally right.
People trying to replicate Sabbath sound are like a whole new genre now. Like Uncle Acid and all these kind of all of these albums kind of spawned a whole new genre.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Pink Floyd went very much down the melodic sort of rock route, where we find a lot of people today taking heavy influence from them. Even people who you wouldn't imagine to, people who I slated last week, like Nightwish, have actively stated that the melodies behind Pink Floyd is what's inspired them. But that's probably a bad example because they're shite. But
Pink Floyd.
So Pink Floyd versus Led Zeppelin. How are we going to do that one, lads? Because I don't know.
When it comes down to it, I don't really like Dark Side of the Moon, and I like Led Zepp 4, so I'm immediately voting Led Zepp 4. Don't even need to think about it.
I actually think track by track, Led Zeppelin 4 is more enjoyable to me than this particular album of Pink Floyd's.
Yeah,
even
Pink
if
Floyd
they have other albums that maybe I would have chosen over, like Metal.
I would pick Metal over Led Zepp 4, but just as it so happens, this is the album that's got down to it.
Yeah, I think if there were other albums there, like for me personally, The Wall is like a religious experience.
Yeah.
And if The Wall was there, I'd probably pick The Wall over Led Zepp 4.
The Wall is really but The Wall was after Dark Side of the Moon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Dark Side paved the way for The Wall.
It was the first album that sort of all fit together. It was all concept, and then
extended
they went, let's do that,
concept art rock.
So just because it's Pink Floyd, I think we're going to go for Led Zepp 4.
Sorry, Pink Floyd.
Sorry, Rainbows.
Sorry, Louis. I'm sure out there you're cursing
out
us.
there somewhere he's cringing, rolling over in his bed, being like, "Wow, my entire insides are burning."
Well, luckily for you, Louis, you're wrong. So if you're listening to this, we love you, but you are wrong.
Okay, Power Slave versus Black Sabbath's Paranoid.
It's Paranoid.
It's Paranoid.
Don't even need to think about it.
Like, Power Slave made it this far on the fact that it's like a pet love of mine, but fundamentally in what it's influenced, Black Sabbath all the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Paranoid is just too huge.
Same opinion.
Yeah, regardless of the fact that I'm in love with Power Slave as an album, you can't not get. If War Pigs, Paranoid, Iron Man, Fairies Wear Boots, Electric Funeral,
Planet Caravan's on there too.
It's too many goods.
Planet Caravan is like post rock before rock even probably took off. That album is so perfect.
Yeah, all of the songs
true
for
trends,
sure.
true like genre setting music.
Yes, exactly.
Which now it's come down to it. I think Led Zeppelin is as well. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah,
very
the
much.
two of them together.
very
1969,
heavy,
both.
pretty much metal albums, really. Some
How
of
are
the
we going to
biggest.
choose who wins? This is impossible.
It depends whether it's rock or metal.
But we
Here we go.
are
This
the
is
rock
it.
and
These are the
metal
two best
society.
rock and metal albums of all time.
Yeah, and yeah, Jesus.
To be fair, that said, a lot of Led Zepp stuff could be considered like metal, pretty much. It's quite
Yes, maybe
early,
not
but it's very heavy. Not this album, unfortunately not. If maybe
Mhm.
Led Zepp 1 or something like that, then I might consider it metal. But
Does
So-
anyone have a choice? Because I'm struggling.
Yeah,
think I'm gonna go
me
with.
too.
If we have to choose, I'm gonna have to go with Paranoid because I listened to Paranoid when I was maybe 3 or 4, and I still remember it. Listening to it in the car on the way to Tesco, and listening to Electric Funeral and just being blown away. And it's had such an impact on my life.
Me too.
Why-
Yeah, I agree for the same reasons.
Why has the tech wizard put Nightwish on the screen? Get rid of it before I remove you from your job.
The tech wizard wishes to depart this realm of existence pretty rapidly. So
But I think I've tried to make a lot of decisions so far based upon like musical quality. But to make this decision, it's gonna have to be off of personal preference,
I
which
think
would
it's got to
be
be at this point.
Paranoid. I will go on record saying that Volume 4 is a better album musically, but is
Yeah.
it the one that I think should win? No.
Maybe. I
What?
don't
So
know,
if volume?
because
Oh, sorry.
Paranoid also
Sorry.
has great epic songs. No, just that. Just Paranoid also has lots of very epic songs with really good musicianship as well. To be honest, if you really look at it, so yeah,
that
it
first
kind
note of Iron Man
Yeah.
is just groundbreaking for 1970.
of yeah,
It's just a
man.
terrifying note that just rings out for like 30 seconds or whatever.
Yes.
Fuck it, it's great.
War Pigs as well.
Yeah, War Pigs. Fucking hell.
Like the whole thing is such a dramatic experience.
Have you ever heard an entire crowd sing War Pigs? It moves you.
Yes.
More importantly,
Yes,
have you
yes,
heard an entire
at the
crowd
ending.
sing War Pigs when War Pigs isn't playing? And you can still have
Oh,
everyone
dear.
singing it and everyone feeling the same emotion that's found in the song.
Play the end again.
I think Hand of
Yeah,
Doom is my
yeah.
favorite song from that album, but
That's a good one.
I love those Vietnam kind of vibes, very heavy, doomy.
Mentions
Okay.
like Napalm. It's very visual as well. That's
that.
Well, I'm gonna
all
have
of those songs have such a journey.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I
have to
agree.
call it, boys.
Yeah.
Felix, what are you voting for?
Paranoid.
Owen, what are you voting
I
for?
concur. Paranoid.
Cool. Paranoid it
concur.
is. A round
Paranoid.
of applause for
Paranoid
Paranoid.
smashes the victory over Led Zeppelin, unfortunately.
Officially the best album.
The best album of all
Officially the
time,
best
as
album of
shortlisted
the
by
genre.
Tanya.
This is what I was going to say. So I think we've got about 7 minutes left of this live stream. And in this last 7 minutes, though I agree that this is quite possibly one of the best albums ever written, is there any album that you would put in personally that would beat it?
That would beat Paranoid.
Yeah.
The only band I can see competing with Black Sabbath is Black Sabbath. And in that case, I would put Master of Reality up as the more musically interesting album because it basically birthed doom and stoner metal. It's riffy, like, and it's got the nice little tracks like Embryo and Orchid when they were kind of getting it's quite a performance. You know, you get a little break in between the really heavy songs like After Forever.
Yeah.
And it's also Geezer Butler going mad and talking about religion and all these weird
Yeah.
things while they're talking about smoking drugs and
Sure.
like, you know, one song's about loving weed and then the next one's about making fun of people who aren't Christian, like people who aren't religious, you know, stuff like that. It's just bonkers. Great album.
Sure, yeah.
I've just realised this entire time that I have been made into a swing state on the live stream.
You are actually Nevada now.
Mostly, yeah.
It's actually Ohio, but
Ohio.
I think if I were to personally pick a band that would beat Paranoid, it'd be one that I'd already mentioned, which is Pink Floyd's The Wall for me, because not only does it have intelligent design on album, it had even further intelligent design as a live production. They built the wall on stage, they knocked down the wall on stage, and the performance from the beginning of the Wall tour to the end of the Wall tour was completely different. They were even part of the sort of the revolution between East and West Germany, bringing down of the wall there. They were there. Members of the band were helping take down bricks from the wall. So I feel because of worldwide influence, live performance influence, and album influence, the Wall would beat Paranoid, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
I mean, I can see the argument.
I concur, however, that you're wrong. No.
I can see the argument. It's a bad one, but no. That's fair enough.
Well, it's a lot of it's about personal taste anyway.
I think at this point, once you get down,
there's lots of levels of best.
What would you go for, Owen? If something had to rival Paranoid for the best metal album of all time, or best rock and
metal album of all time, yeah, it's a difficult one to call. It's a couple of bands I'd suggest. Maybe Thin Lizzy, with maybe Jailbreak is one of my favorites.
Cracking, yeah.
Also Ride the Lightning.
Metallica,
was very influential on me personally, so has stuck with me very, very well. It's very iconic in my opinion. It's very hard to say. Maybe even another Maiden album, or there's lots of like this inner circle of best albums that could possibly take the number one, which are roundabout equal in my mind, I suppose.
Yeah, if Number of the Beast or Killers was up there, I probably would have voted that through to the end.
But Sabbath, Sabbath may have still taken number one.
Even up against Sabbath, I think up against Sabbath, I just can't.
Volume 4 as well. I already said that, didn't I?
Would you vote Volume 4 over Paranoid?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I would, even though it has a couple of weaker tracks. The other tracks are just so interesting.
It's got some of their like the weakest tracks, but also their strongest ones.
Yeah, and you get a bit of the religious
Snowblind,
thing.
Supernaut.
Yeah, the cocaine songs.
The cocaine songs, basically.
And Laguna Sunrise, like what's going on there? That's very pretty. And you get the religious theme again at the end with Every Day Comes and Goes. So
you can see the coke had a bit of an effect. The coke is having an effect on the quality control of Black Sabbath by this point.
Yeah.
God. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we should quickly round up the discussion there to avoid any more discussions of drugs.
Hey, you're talking about Black Sabbath.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. So we're probably going to round it there. I'd like to personally thank Owen for joining us this week. It's been really a massive pleasure to have him all the way from Austria.
Oh no, it's a lot of fun. Thank you for
your opinions that made decisions for me, because God, that was really difficult. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Felix for supporting me in this role and making sure that I don't become a tyrant on these live streams and keeping me in check.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Tech Wizard for doing all of these weird and wonderful visuals if you were lucky enough to see us in person. And a thank you to everybody who joined us watching us today and joined us in the chat with their no doubt valuable opinions, such as Gib Metallica. And thank you to anybody listening in the future. Do note that we'll be doing these every 2 weeks, even throughout lockdown, which is now being instilled pretty much everywhere. We're still going to encourage more content to be made. So if you have any suggestions, do contact us and let us know.
And please do get involved.
Running out of ideas.
Please get involved. If you've got any comments to put on the RAMS, like the actual chat, please put them on. We'll be happy to talk to you, see what you think.
If you want to just give us verbal abuse, you're more than welcome to do that too. It'd be quite funny. So I'm going to leave that one there. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.